now on the way to Annie's grave out at Jones Springs Cemetery. Today is about 9 miles. Takes 10 to 15 minutes. But back in 1870, it would have taken almost 4 hours. The distance was longer because they didn't have as straight a road, so it was about 12 miles. And you had to tend to the horses. So it would have been a full day. 4 hours out there, an hour or so at the grave, and then a 4-hour trip back to Warrenton. So it would have taken a full day to make this trip. I'm sure it was a rather sad trip, but at the same time he wanted to see Annie's grave. As I stated in my first video, Annie and Agnes had been really close. So I'm sure that's one reason why she came with Mr. Lee. She wanted to come back and see Annie's grave. We're now at the marker for Annie Lee. This was the marker right on 401. You'll see it if you come down 401 headed to Lewisburg. It states that the grave's about a half mile up the road. It's really not about a quarter. But this is the marker on the side of the road. All right, we're here at the grave of Annie Lee, which is out on the Jones Family Cemetery. You can see the large headstone. That's Annie's large headstone. That headstone was made in 1866 by a Confederate soldier who had been injured in the war, but he was a stonemason, and he made this out of granite, and it was put up, and a little ceremony was held in 1866. Let's move over toward it. I don't know if you can read that or not, but it says Annie C. Lee, General R. E. Lee, and Mary Curtis Lee. Annie C. is Annie Carter Lee, and General Robert E. Lee, and Mary Curtis Lee, his wife. We've said that the townspeople brought large baskets full of flowers and put into the carriage for the Lees to bring out here and put on Annie's grave. And they say that it was so many flowers, it was just full of flowers all around the bottom of the memorial headstone for Annie when they visited in 1870. I can see Agnes now carefully putting the flowers around as pretty as she possibly could, arranging them to where they looked really beautiful. I know it would have been a wonderful picture if they had had a way to record it, but they didn't have that. It's said that after they visited here a while, that they went to the Jones family who owned the cemetery and the springs and the resort where the Lee family, the girls, had stayed during the war, and thanked them so much for allowing her to be buried here in their private cemetery. After that, they headed back to Warrenton. And it says that later that afternoon and night, they loaded into a sleeper car train, which is kind of unusual for the time, I imagine, and they were actually heading south. He wanted to get into a little bit warmer climate, and they actually made it to Florida for a while. But 6 months after coming here and visiting Annie's grave, Robert E. Lee died on October 12th, 1870. And only 3 years later, in November of 1873, Agnes came down with typhoid fever, and she also died. I don't know if it's from a broken heart or old age, but a month later, Mrs. Lee, Mary Lee, also passed away. They're all buried in Lexington, Virginia now. Annie Lee's body was moved in 1994. And the reason was a lot of vandalizing had taken place here. This became like a hangout. And at some point, they actually had pulled the headstones over, and both the Jones and the Lee headstone had been turned over. The Sons of the Confederacy got together and they cleaned everything up around here, and they replaced they fixed the stones back in place, put them back together. But the Lee family had already made their decision to move Annie. So she was moved in 1994. She is not here anymore. It's only this marker, which tells us about a time in history and a man who lost his daughter in the middle of a tragic war. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this little series. I broke it up into 3 parts because I didn't want it to be so long. I hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, please hit like. That lets me know you watched it and that you enjoyed it. And I do appreciate it. And I hope you will continue to watch my videos as I make them. And as always, thank you for watching.